Hi there, this is another video for an update for my 360 video splat prep tool. When you download the package, you will get a zip file, you unzip that and you'll get these contents. Generally, you just run the exe to launch it. Don't restructure this. You can move the top folder any way you like, but keep everything as it is here. It's gone up to about 5 gig now, and that's because I'm including all of the CUDA stuff that's needed and the models as well, which are all fairly large for the AI masking. And it'll take maybe 20-30 seconds to run. It's extracting files and stuff like that. But in order to do this update, I had to increase those libraries, and means you shouldn't have to download a specific version of CUDA or anything like that. It should just look at the version that it needs. So here's the GUI. It's pretty similar to previous versions with a couple of additions. So if I go to, let's take this video because it'd be useful to show this one. This particular one, I have extracted frames, but if I dragged, let's probably this one. If you drag a video on, it will basically ask you to extract the frames before it can show you a preview. So on this one, I've already extracted that and kind of prepped something, but I'll kind of take you through the stages of the tool. So first thing you'll do is extract frames. Usually when you load a video up, it will set it to the maximum number of frames. So basically I'm extracting one of these images each second over 86 seconds, which gives me 86 frames. So I could change this to 0.5 of a second, and obviously that increases. Now that's the full length, but you want to test with a smaller subset of that to make sure that the two main things that really affect the outcome are going to be the time duration and the overlap between the split files coming from each one of those extracted frames. So you tend to play with that and test before you commit to doing thousands of images at a time. So you would set this to something smaller. Say we're just going to we'll do 5 frames for the moment, just keep it small, and I can show you the steps and process. So it's a 3-stage kind of process. You extract the frames, you run the masking, you set up manual masking and the splitting settings, and then you split the images out, and then you would take that into reality scan. So I'll just hit extract frames for now. So this will run. I've done a lot of improvements in terms of the drag and drop and what you can do. And you can batch process all the steps. So each of these stages can all be done as one, and you can drag multiple videos on and run all of those as well. But I'll show you the slight changes in the GUI because of other issues. Anyway, so once we've done this, I'll run AI masking. Generally, I keep this checked off for keeping them separately. You may need to want to put it in for some reason, or have a set of masks, which is totally fine. Once this is generated, as it's finishing masking, you can actually update this. I'll detach this as well. I added this as a new feature. It may not go to this size initially. You just got to put it where you want it. Set size, and then it should persist between sessions. Added in an overlay button as well, so we can turn those on and off. One thing that's useful to be aware is this seam offset feature here as well. As I step through this, and I can use the arrow keys for that, you'll see sometimes, because I'm actually positioned awkwardly between the join, it doesn't detect me as a person. So if I drag this, it will offset horizontally the equilateral image. So then if I run it again, we should now get a full mask because it's seeing a full person and can detect that. So it's just be aware that sometimes you get edge cases like this where the seam offset needs to be run. Now, it doesn't affect the extraction. The frames are still the way they are. So it offsets it visually here, and then it will apply it when you do the split. So if we changed our splitting, say, to cube map, because that's a nice easy one to display it, I'm going to turn on selected frames only. So I'm just going to do 1 frame. And so you can see that mask now worked, whereas it wasn't before. And so I can now run a split. So if I actually split this into a cube map, you'll see I've got export mask separately and reality scan in there. And also this is now centered there. So if I wanted to put it back for some reason and set this back to 0, so I'm off to the sides again, and then split it just to a cube map. Oops, slideshows. You'll see it's, yeah, there we go. So you see it's put me back over to the right-hand side. So that can be quite useful in terms of a trick to essentially get better masks out of it as well. Cube maps are really only going to be used in Blender or Unity or something like that. Add a little tooltip in there. So most people won't use them, but you can save the individual cube faces as well as the cube map. You can also have a strip as well. So if I just do this one, you'll see it gives it to me as a row. So it can be useful for other things, and I've kind of kept that in there. In terms of splitting, the other main thing you'll be changing, if I just turn this overlay back on because now it's pertinent, is the amount of overlap. So often I go as high as 60, maybe 70, and essentially each extracted frame is being split into 8 images, which are all square, and it won't go above the resolution of the input source. So I'm trying to keep the pixels 1:1 as much as possible. I don't want to make up resolution like that. So depending on the amount of tiles, it will change the resolution of those split images. So if we just run this now, you'll see I'm only doing 1 frame still, and this will have the mask frames and myself. You can see when I load this up, this is 2304, 2304, and that's because I've got such a large amount of overlap that it's increasing the sort of focal length of the camera, so it's doing a wider image with more distortion on it. And then we've got the 2 masks in here separately. So if I turn off that, it will then split all the images in one go. Something to note that you need to have GPU acceleration on for extract frames and masking, but the splitting uses the CPU because it uses the multi-core of the CPU to process at the same time. So that I found to be more efficient than GPU only. So yeah, just be aware of that. It should fall back gracefully if I uncheck this to disabling it and then just using a CPU only mode. If I turn it back on, it's giving me a warning about memory just because I've got multiple things open. I'll just say yes to this for a moment. And it will also say it's enabled and name the graphics card that you've got as well, just so you've got a good sense of that working. So that's how we'd split single video. If we're doing multiple videos, we can just drag those on, and you'll see it now says it's in batch mode. So I tend to just dock this because I need the text there. And this has changed a little bit. It's the only thing that does change in here. And that's because you don't know what the max frames would be for either video because there'll be different lengths. So all we can really do is limit the total number of frames that we create. Or if you uncheck that, it will just keep going at every second until it runs to the end of the video. So you'll get 2 separate folders with these files that will be different because the video lengths will be different. But if you wanted to keep them for a test, you could just do 5 frames, and if you hit extract, that's going to run on both videos now, because previously it got a little bit problematic, but I spent a lot of time fixing all that. So each of the stages can be run on as many videos as you drop in there now as well. And you can also run batch process all steps, which will then do the extraction, the masking, and the split images. So say you do your tests on these ones, I want to unlimit that. If I hit go again, it will do it. But be very careful about your disk space, which is why I've got enough warnings in here about that, because it could fill it up quite easily and generate a lot of data. I've tried to do estimates, but they're not always accurate depending on the hard drive. So another thing I've added in is better support for folder dragging of images. So if I drag this on, there's 5 images in there and all of them get loaded up. if I drag a single image on, and this is quite useful to understand cube maps, and I can do that on a longer video just to show how little of the video frame is not as distorted as we're getting here. So you can see all the yellow is the top of the cube, and this blue is the bottom of the cube, and then these are all the least distorted faces in there. So if I set this to a cube map, we'll just do the one frame again. This will split that fine, and you'll see that's how that cube map gets mapped out. So that front one is going to be mapped out here, and the bottom and top. So you can see this comes out under kind of square and not distorted, but it's quite distorted in this image, which is what we're getting from the 360 camera and those very wide-angle lenses. So I also added in support for JPEG images. Again, they can be dragged on singular or selected, or the folder, and it will load them both up. I also did a test with the Reflect Sharper Frames tool, where it will pick sharp frames, but they won't necessarily be in a sequence. And I found that you'll kind of see, I think when I scrub through this, yeah, you'll see here it loads the frame 6, etc. up, and when you run this through the processing, the naming will stay the same for each of those frames, so you've got that kind of correlation between them. Another thing I've added in is kind of support for single lens videos as well. So this is an X5 single lens test. Again, let me just turn off that overlay because I'm not going to split this just yet. This one's already sort of been tested out. And the good thing about this is it gives you a much larger resolution image. So you see this is 3840 by 2160. But obviously it's only going to use that front facing lens, or however you've got it set up to run. But it's another interesting way of doing things, and that sort of ability to create higher res video rather than having to split them all out could be quite useful for you. So I've kind of added that in as a feature as well. Yeah, so that's kind of pretty much the shortest version I can do for all the tools in there. Actually, yeah, let me quickly show you. So once, if we took that split video, and we've got our frames extracted here, and we've got our masks, you can basically, because I had this set up for reality scan, you can just do a Control A, select all, and you can drop these into reality scan, and I've just hit a line. I've not really changed from the defaults, and you're looking for something like this, where, should I go to the top view, you want the split images to be aligned, because this represents each of the extracted frames, but obviously there's 8 cameras here, and you want this to be as kind of square as possible to know the alignment is good. Now it's never going to be perfect because there's 2 lenses and there's a bit of separation there, but I found the better this looks, and you'll get, like, here's the end, you see they're starting to separate because there aren't other images in there to solve that. So once you get an alignment, I'll just quickly run through this under the alignment tool, and then you would, obviously rotate this, get it set up. You extract the registration to the CSV file, so it's the first one on the drop-down list. I think the defaults are fine for this. I'll just do it here as well. You get a little pop-up like that, and you're just going to OK that. And then you need to extract the PLY, which is under the point cloud there. And again, this one I've just tested, so I'm just going to overwrite that one. And then you hit OK. And what I'll do is actually I'm just going to launch another version of Postshot, so I can just show you the dragging in process. So I've saved these 2 files into another folder here. If I drag them on, I don't get any images, so it's not going to solve anything. But this CSV is the list of frames here. Now you need to drag the images on and then the masks on separately into this folder here. The only real way you can sort these, because they're in the same folder, is to set this by size. Because the masks are very small, it will always sort them in the right order then. So then you shift select that, drag those into there, and then I'll drag the masks into there as well. And then I'll just hit import, and then it will start training straight away, basically. Now this is probably going to explode because I've got another one open at the same time, but it just gives you an idea what's there, and I'll show you that one. So I'm going to pause this training, Let's go back to this other version. So this I did slightly more frames. I didn't do the full set. And it's also to show you something that's really important to understand, is that masking is not a magic bullet. You need to go and capture what you've occluded with yourself. So in this one is the ones I was using. If I turn the cameras off here, you can see, you know, there's a bit of a gap in here because basically I just walked facing this way into here and then walked around basically the flower beds, just trying to get a interesting capture of this whole space. But you can see there's bits here where there's holes and stuff like that because I didn't loop back without me being masked. So as I'm walking, I'm in the frame, and then that's going to cause mirrors. Now, if I didn't have masking, I would get tons of sort of duplicate versions of myself. You're going to see my shadow moving across there as well, which is kind of interesting. So yeah, it's not a magic bullet. You need to get extra coverage to make sure that works. But I found it does significantly reduce the amount of floaters that you get in the Gaussian Splat itself. This was done on an Insta1X for a while ago, so it's not X5, but it does just show the process and show what the masking can do. So that's hopefully a briefish introduction to everything, and I'll do a much more in-depth video covering a little bit more of the sort of problem solving and other issues that you need to do with the tool. Anyway, I hope that's been useful. Please add comments on the YouTube video, and please drop me a review on Gumroad. That's really helpful to support the tool. Thanks very much.